So you've been waiting for Bloodborne Remastered for 8 years now? Well, I'm sorry to break it to you, but it ain't coming anytime soon, we know that for a fact. But here's the second best thing, Lies of P. I know it's the obvious joke to make, oh look at this game, it looks like Bloodborne Remastered, but honestly, believe me, this game is as close as it comes to Fromsoft games. As someone who's played all of their games, this game is really a Fromsoft game. Design-wise, gameplay-wise, story-wise, it's really similar, and if you played any Fromsoft game, this is gonna feel right at home. Before we start, if you enjoy the video, please like, subscribe. I like to do these open world video games mostly, but sometimes I like to dabble in things like Fromsoft games. Now obviously, because this is the first game this studio makes that is a Fromsoft kind of game, a Souls-like, it's not gonna be as good as Fromsoft games because they have a lot of experience with this stuff. But honestly, for a first time try at this style, this game is amazing. So let's talk about the gameplay first. Weapons are broken into two parts, the handle and the blade itself. Each one part of the weapon has a specific ability that you can use. So you can have two abilities on your weapon at a time, and you can carry with yourself two weapons just like in Bloodborne. The other difference from Bloodborne is there is no gun in your hand, in your left hand, or shield like in Dark Souls. It's kinda like Sekiro with the arm that you have. So you get special abilities for your weapons like you had in Bloodborne, but you also get the special abilities from Sekiro on your hand. So it's kinda like a mix between both games, and that extends to the gameplay itself. When you're fighting enemies, you can get the option to dodge or to block and parry. Although I gotta mention the parry doesn't feel as satisfying as Sekiro because I found it hard to predict when I'm supposed to parry exactly. The animations are kinda tricky, which I do appreciate. I love to learn enemy combat mechanics, but they are a little tricky to predict, even after a long play session. So parrying, as much as I love to do it, and I loved it in Sekiro and I love it here, might not be the best option because it is hard to predict when you are about to be hit. And I'm not the bitchy kind of player, but believe me, I had a lot of instances where I felt like I wasn't supposed to be hit and it was supposed to be a parry, but it wasn't, and I lost health and I died. I'm not saying it out of pity, it just feels like it's not tuned to the perfect amount with the parry limits. Now moving on to the other side of the combat, the difficulty. I had a lot of problems with other FromSoft games that they are just not as difficult. They either resort to spammy and annoying kinda attacks, or they're just too easy and they're a breeze. This game feels like the perfect match between the two worlds. They're not spammy, the enemies are tricky, and the animations they have are really fantastic looking. Like I said, attack-wise, sometimes they don't feel fair, but flare-wise and when you look at them, they look great. They feel great to fight, to attack, and they're not easy. They do tricks. They come at you in groups when they're weak enemies. They come at you alone when they're strong enemies. It's the FromSoft design principles, and they really do implement them in a really dedicated way here. Like honestly, I'm surprised they're not sued, but it is well done. If you love FromSoft games and the gameplay in their games, this is gonna be right up your alley. This is what I wanted from Elden Ring. I love Elden Ring as much as the next guy, but I would have loved to seen a mix between Dark Souls and Sekiro. So you have like a left hand with special abilities, but you also have right hand with weapons. Elden Ring didn't go that route, but this game does, and I feel like it is a really good decision because it allows a lot of different playstyles. Speaking of the hand, a lot of games do this thing where they give you a gimmick but they don't really invest in it, so it feels gimmicky and it's not worth the use. This hand is not like that. Only from the demo I had the experience of using one or two kinds of arms, and they both felt unique and useful. My favorite one is the one where you just pull enemies towards you, which is really something I wish I had in Dark Souls, but it is here and I love to use it. So basically what I'm trying to say is that the hand has a lot of uses and utilities, and it's really well implemented, and it's really almost on the same level as the hand in Sekiro. Now the last thing that I always have a problem with FromSoft-like games, Dark Souls-like games, Souls-likes, is that they do too much flair on the attacks. Every time you swing your sword, there's like 500 different effects coming out of it. And it's really annoying because Fromsoft are really masters at subtlety. They give one or two small effects that really add to the weapon and the feel of it, but they don't overdo it, they always keep it at a minimum. It got more with Dark Souls 3 compared to other Dark Souls games, but still if you compare Dark Souls 3 or Elden Ring to other games, the flair and the effects that come out of the weapon are really toned down. And this game goes that route. I was afraid because in some of the trailers it showed like there was gonna be too much fireworks and shit going around, but it's not like that. At least from the demo that I got to play, it really is just toned down, it adds to the immersion, and it's really pretty and well done. And I love the fact that you get covered in oil when you fight these robot things just like you did in Bloodborne but with blood. And now let's take a minute to talk about the world itself. How does it compare to Dark Souls games? Or how does it stand on its own? Honestly, I do love the design. I love the idea that you play as a puppet who also is a human because he's Pinocchio. So you get the choice to lie and act as a human or embrace your puppet self. I love the choice. Dark Souls usually doesn't have these big choices. They have one or two choices throughout the whole game, but this game seems to implement it in more areas. I played the demo and I had two choices to make, and it's just the opening area. So hopefully these choice things and consequences continue throughout the game and they do focus on it, because I think it's a really interesting idea, because in other FromSoft games you play as a select character that you create a backstory for. Here you're playing as Pinocchio, who is connected to two worlds, and you get the choice to choose between them. So it is similar to Dark Souls story-wise, but it is also different and interesting in its own right. The world itself feels great, looks great, like I said, reminds me of Bloodborne, and the robots are really well designed. I had to fight two bosses in this demo. One of them was a robot, one of them was a human. Human fights were fun. It's really hard, it took me a lot of tries to beat that guy, but it is fun to fight him. And the robot just is so amazingly designed. Honestly, it stands on par with other FromSoft games. It stands on par with the enemies and bosses in Dark Souls 3. Maybe it doesn't have as many mechanics, maybe it's not as well done, but honestly it is up there. The hitboxes feel great. I never felt like I was hit unfairly or unjustly, unless it was just me parrying at the wrong moment like I mentioned before, but the hitboxes feel great. Another thing I wanted to mention is the world that I got to play in this demo. I don't know, I feel like this is the starting area. It might be differently designed because it's a demo, I can't be sure, but the part that I got to play, it was huge. Like, how big is this demo? Is it like a tenth of the game? And like a third of the game? I don't know. But it is a really big area. Design wise, it feels like FromSoft levels, but it is focused more on finding shortcuts, like in Dark Souls 1 or Demon Souls. Unlike Dark Souls 3, where the focus was on finding the next bonfire, in this game the focus on finding a bonfire and a shortcut and then a bonfire. So you're gonna feel the connection in the world and how it all loops together. And the first area, just like Yarnum, is really pretty, full of angry villagers who are in this case robots with dogs and whatever, and it was really fun to explore. I got lost in a couple of locations, which I really do love because that's part of the charm in Dark Souls games, and it does carry on here. Like I said, they really took a lot of inspiration. It's borderline copyright, like it's almost a Dark Souls game, but with robots instead of monsters. And lastly, just some random things that I wanted to mention. There's bonfires in this game where you can rest and fast travel. There's a maiden that can level you up in the main hub of the game, which, speaking of the main hub, it's in a hotel. It looks great. I love the NPCs that I get to see, although it feels a little barren, but I imagine just like Dark Souls games, it's gonna get more and more full and useful throughout the story. But for now, the main hub looks fun. You get the bonfires, like I said. Gameplay, I already talked about it. It feels like Dark Souls. It's a mix between Dark Souls and Sekiro. A really good mix, honestly. The design of enemies and bosses is really fun, just like Dark Souls. The movement itself feels like Dark Souls, although on that point I have a complaint. The roll doesn't feel as smooth. Time between when you get hit and when you're allowed to roll, the recovery time, is a little too long, which is one of my problems in the game, but that can be fixed easily. And maybe there's a ring or something that you can use to fix this. But it felt a little cheap that every time I got hit, I needed to wait like half a second longer to be able to roll than I had to wait in Dark Souls games. But other than that, it feels just like a Dark Souls game. The character even moves like a Dark Souls character. You run with the circle button, you jump with the L3, It's exactly like that. So I'm not over exaggerating. It is exactly like a Dark Souls game. When you play, you will know the controls by heart because they changed literally nothing. They only added to it. And I also wanted to take a second to talk about the durability mechanic. I always hated it in Dark Souls that when you get a weapon, there's a durability and you get stressed over it, but it never actually affects anything, especially in Dark Souls 3. In Dark Souls 2, there were mechanics that broke the weapon faster, so it was an actual risk. But in Dark Souls 3, it was never a risk. I just got the weapon and used it until I finished the game. In this game, the weapons do break faster, and I really like that. Throughout your run of the level, it's gonna be losing a lot of its durability. But to balance that out, you have a little machine on your arm that you can use infinitely to repair the weapon while you are in the level. I really like the balance. It adds another layer of gameplay to it where you have to keep attention to the durability of the weapon, and the animation just looks good. I like the animation, which just goes to all animations in this game. The way you open a door, the way you slide on the ladder, it all looks great, really well designed. So yeah, that's Lies of P. We're not getting Bloodborne anytime soon, as much as I would love to see it, so this is the second best thing that you can get in regards to Dark Souls games. But I don't want to downplay the game, because honestly it deserves its own spot on this list. It deserves to be more than Bloodborne remasters or Souls-like. It's Lies of P. It's really well done, and I really think you should give it a chance. I got to play it as part of the PlayStation promotion thing where there's a free demo to play, so if you're bored and you have place on your PlayStation, try it. You have nothing to lose. You can download it for free, and the opening level of the demo is really long. You're gonna take a couple of hours to do it, unless you're just a fucking master and you run through it in like half an hour, which in that case, good for you, but it took me hours to do it, and I really had a ton of fun with it. And since Fromsoft is refusing to give us any information on the Elden Ring DLC, this is what we have, and honestly, it is a good thing to have. So, I am excited for the full release. I am gonna be playing it when it releases. I'm sorry that this was not an Assassin's Creed or Far Cry video. I know that you're probably here for that, but I really wanted to take a minute to mention this game because it is worth the spotlight. So, like I said, if you have time, try it out. Let me know what you think. If you enjoyed this video, there's one on your screen right now that I think you're gonna enjoy. Other than that, just like, do the YouTube stuff, subscribe if you wanna know about open world games and stuff like that. And thank you for watching, and as always, have a nice day.